We have a male leopard. Isn't that just fantastic? He's obviously enjoying the mist, lying in the sun, underneath the torchwood tree that is so often shared sightings here at Buffelshoek Dam with us. Isn't just this been the most amazing morning for cats? Djuma just producing, it's a gift that is just keep on giving here today, with Sindile starting off as Sindile, and then those wonderful Nkahuma cubs and their mothers, and now a male leopard, which to me looks like Tingana, but then again, I'm not the best at identifying these cats, to be honest. But with these raggedy ears, it could possibly even be Mvula, which we haven't seen for some time. He's been missing in action, and as far as I know, mating with another leopard north of here. And it could be him just lying in the sun, enjoying the solitude. That is just fantastic. Still not looking his usual good self, I must be honest with you. Have a look at that hip bone that he's got sticking out there. This is a skinny cat. Expected though, he's not a youngster anymore, and leopard do lose some condition as they get a little bit older. That being said though, he's not in terrible condition. This guy is obviously still able to dominate a female enough, or dominate an area enough that a female warrants being mated with by him. Looks like he's damaged his claw as well there. Hey boy, what's happening to you? You've been in the wars a little bit. It's not uncommon for them to damage claws, even lose claws, in the Malay that is hunting, or being a solitary hunter, hunting the size prey that they do hunt. He will be fully capable of taking down an adult kudu of 400 pounds. Yeah, that is definitely Mvula. I can just see his face. Excuse me for 1 second while I just update everybody on the radio here. Light stations, there's one male leopard at Buffelshoek Dam. 2 vehicles in this particular sighting. Taxon, you're welcome to make your way in if you like. There's a space open for you. That beautiful green-eyed stare. If you think back a couple of minutes to those lions that we were just with, they have a topaz, or a yellowy eye. I don't quite know exactly how to explain. I mean, I've read that they call them topazy. Whereas leopard, for me, always have a bluey green eye. All right, I think Brent's got one of these birds that keep on flitting away. Go through there quickly, and it'll allow me some time to get the radio working. All right, you catch me. Sorry, I'm busy listening to the radio, trying to do 2 things at once, which for me is virtually impossible. So we are looking at Mvula. I think I'm pretty confident that that is exactly what we are looking at. And now that we are a little bit, yes, thank you very much for helping me with the identification of this particular leopard. All of you that have confirmed that it's Mvula. I need all the help that I can get with these particular things, you know. Just have a look at the sun has now broken through these mist banks that are lying above us, and it's just affording us the most unbelievable sighting of him. That is just superb. You know, those footprints that you can see there, that back foot in particular, is something that we have been tracking. I'm intimately familiar with Mvula's footprint. He obviously registers, which means that the footprint that we follow is that one that you're having a look at. Those 2, those are the ones that we see in the sand and so often battle to find. Mvula, like his counterpart Tingana, they walk the most unbelievable distances. I fondly remember a memory with Scott where we tracked him from way off on the other side of Djuma, literally through Djuma in 4 hours, and he stopped to hunt a leguan, which is a big monitor lizard. He hunted a little steenbok and inhaled that along the way, and literally between game drives he walked from one end to the other, probably in a total of about 6 or 7 miles zigzagging through the bush, and disappeared 4 minutes before we went live, as is so often the case. Just have a look at that vista. Katie, all the way from the UK this morning, good morning firstly, and secondly, you've asked, with a leopard sleeping on the ground, does this mean he's comfortable? Does this mean that there's lion around, or he's just feeling at ease? Katie, to be honest, leopard cornered in a tree, although they can climb slightly higher than what lion can, it's actually more dangerous for them to be in trees than on the ground. On the ground, leopard are vulnerable to other leopard. They are vulnerable to hyena, and they're vulnerable to lion, but generally only hyena and lion when they have a kill around, and then those predators are usually focused on the kill, and will come and chase him off and then devour whatever he has. Other leopard, Mvula's at that particular point where he will want to defend his territory and his rights over territory against any interlopers. And in a year or two will probably be at the point where he won't be able to defend that and will lose it. And at that point, he does stand the risk of being injured in a confrontation, mortally injured in a confrontation, which is usually the demise of a leopard. Injury of some sort, to be finished off by hyena, or in most cases just another predator. They live hard lives, these animals out here, I must be honest with you. They're born hard. Their first year of life is incredibly rough, and then going into adolescence, and that solitary nature that they need to then cement in a territory, defend, and then eventually be out-competed by it. It's never an easy thing. But just to conclude that particular point, he's actually at the safest where he is right now. He has a 360 view around him, and he's got many escape routes from where he is. Shamsung, you've just asked me, is that mange on his face or just old age balding? Shamsung, you know, being bald myself, I'd like to say that it's mange and that going bald is not a problem, but that is definitely an observation that you have made there, and a very true observation. Leopard don't go bald, fortunately for them, because I think they'd battle to find enough sun cream to keep their heads from going red like mine. But that to me does look like a bit of mange, to be honest. I'm going to call it and say it is mange. This time he's in a poor enough condition for the mange mite to actually proliferate on him. And with those cubs that we have in the area full of mange, it's not unlikely that he would have contracted it from somewhere, and he's now just trying to fight off an infection. Not bad at the moment. He looks like it's at a point where he's rubbing his head. You would have noticed, for those of you who have been following the show for a number of years, that leopard quite often rub their heads on things. They have a lot of sebaceous glands on their foreheads, which they then use to scent mark bushes with. And I think he's using that sort of as a scratching post. Yes, it is mange, I'm going to say. It's not necessarily going to end up as bad as what those cubs from the Styx Pride are. Courtney, I didn't quite catch your question there. I'm just going to ask Kirsty to reread it to me, if you don't mind. Courtney, you asked me if the leopard spots are a pigmentation or is it fur. In other words, if we had to shave this leopard bald, would he have those spots on his skin or just the fur? That's a good question, Courtney. It's definitely a fur. It's definitely coloration of the fur. It's not a pigmentation. However, I've never seen a skinned leopard before, or a shaved leopard before, So I don't actually know if the skin is a different color. I would imagine that it isn't. I mean, I can't imagine why it would be. But good question there, Courtney. You caught me there. I don't actually know. Perhaps one of you'd like to find out. I don't know if there's even references to that or even reference material to that. For that reason, I'm not going to get everyone to go and search for things right now. I think it's most likely that it's just a fur pattern and that the skin is not pigmented in those rosettes that you see there. And that the skin is probably a uniform color of some sort, probably a gray, similar to what we're seeing now on the back of his ears, that grayish skin color on the back of his ears. All right, and I think at this particular point in time, Brent is probably dying to give you an update on his birding safari in Cheetah Plains. So off you go. We'll wait here and catch up with you in a little bit. You know, that's the second person that's called this cat an old man in the last 20 seconds. And, yeah, I mean, is he that old? Is he not? What condition is this particular leopard in? He's got a little bit of mange on his face. His ears are a bit raggedy. He could do with a meal or 10, it looks like. He's still alert. I'm busy trying to contrast what I've seen before in leopard that are old. I think that he's still got a few more years left, to be quite honest with you. I think he'll probably start wandering a little bit wider. But there really isn't a big male in this area. Djuma is a newish male, a young male that is pushing him around. Tingana is obviously capitalizing on Mvula's deteriorating condition and is moving into Mvula's territory. And then you've got Anderson pushing, of course, Tingana up from the west and creating a little bit of pressure from that side. I think he'd still put up a bit of a fight. I'm not convinced he's that old. Dark Knight, you've asked, can old leopards be transferred to other reserves? The easy answer is yes, leopard are very transferable. They relocate incredibly well and they adapt to new environments incredibly well. Will it happen here in the Sabi Sands and the Kruger National Park? No. The reason for that is that this is considered an open system for all that it has a fence around it, but for all its massive surface area. And what we'll try and do is let nature be nature and let things happen as naturally as possible. And it's natural for leopard to get old and to make space for the younger cats. It's necessary for the younger cats to test themselves against the old hats, and they do this to gain experience and the necessary testing that leopard genetic needs. There needs to be hardship and trial, and it's what keeps the genes strong. You can't have weaklings mating with the females in this particular area. And I'm talking about an open system here. I'm talking about a system like the Kruger National Park where its greatest treasure is its biodiversity and its gene pool, the strong, healthy, natural genes that it has, unsullied by anything. But yes, leopard, there's a couple of places in South Africa that rehabilitate leopard. Leopard that have been caught in snares or have become problem leopard in these fringe communities where leopard and people territories overlap. A leopard will quite often be caught before they are killed and then relocated to newer areas or areas where leopard have been eradicated in the past, either through bad farming practices or overhunting in some areas. And they relocate incredibly well. Have a look at those massive forearms that he has there. I mean, those shoulders and those forearms ending, they look almost stubby, but he's actually a fully grown cat, probably standing. They don't stand very tall, leopard. They probably stand about mid-thigh at the shoulder, but can be quite long from nose to tail. You get leopard, just like people, you get leopard of all different sizes and shapes. So D. Smith, you've just sent in a comment that Mvula was the first leopard that you ever saw on Safari Live, and I'm still glad that we're showing him to you, D. Smith, because it's obviously quite a memory jerker for you, which is nice. And then you've also said that James mentioned that Mvula's name means rain, and that's exactly true. Mvula is like rain, but I suppose it doesn't just necessarily mean. It's probably more to do with these African sudden, violent, massive, thunderous rain storms that are so typical of this particular area of the bush, instead of just the soft pitter-patter, which I can't imagine a leopard of such majesty being named after. Still just keeping his head on a swivel, quartering this particular day. I'm not too sure what he's looking for. I mean, he would hunt, he's opportunistic, so if an impala had to come down here and want to get a sip of water, if there's anything left in these mud puddles, or some nyala come down to the edge here, he absolutely will hunt them. But it's also just likely that he's enjoying the view. Hayden, you've just asked me a question that I have absolutely no answer to, but I'm going to ask it. I'm going to share it in any case because I think it's quite a nice question. Firstly, you're asking this question all the way from California, which is impressive because it's pitch black there where you are right now. So good morning to you. And secondly, you've asked how many calories a day does a leopard need to eat to stay healthy? I don't know, to be honest. They need to probably eat between, let's say on average, lions eat between 2 and 5 kilograms of meat a day to stay healthy. So let's halve that to 1 to 3 kilograms. So 2 to 6 pounds of fresh protein per day. And I'm gathering that you're a health conscious person and that you count calories per day. So you know, for those of you who are health consciously minded, let's say 1 to 2 kilograms, so 2 to 6 pounds of fresh protein per day is what he would need to stay healthy or to have a healthy metabolism. Do they eat that? No. Leopard are sort of feast or famine creatures. They will catch whatever they can. Sometimes, if they're very lucky, they can catch more than one animal and cache animals in various trees around where they are and go from one carcass to another. But more often, they go from periods of extended starvation, so periods of a week or more without food, and then they will kill something big and lie for 3 or 4 days feeding on that, and then move off again, sometimes catching something relatively soon, sometimes not. He looks quite skinny, this particular leopard. He looks like he hasn't eaten anything in a week or two. So I hope that answered your question, and that you've found how many calories a piece of venison gives you. Obviously, venison out here having little to no fat on it, so calorie counts would be lower than a piece of fatty beef. He's just laying down there, completely oblivious to us. Just exactly the way I enjoy watching leopard. This leopard would be doing this whether we were here or not, and that is precisely the goal that we try and achieve here at Wild Earth and with Safari Live. We try and touch the earth lightly. Not always possible, especially when you've got Brent Leo Smith driving the car, but then you wouldn't see as many cats as you do without him bashing around the way he does. His pelvis is very skinny. I'm looking now where the base of his tail goes into his pelvis, and you can clearly see that hip joint sticking out there. He needs a meal. I'm just having a look now that we're a little bit closer at that damaged claw that he has there. I don't quite know. Yeah, it does look like he's damaged that claw there, which, on a leopard that's this old, you don't get to this old being a leopard without carrying some scars. There's just no ways that he would have made it this far without broken bones and the rest that goes with it. And that claw could have been the result of an animal pulling incredibly hard against him or getting stuck on something. Old male leopard like this are very, very good at hunting large warthog. And it could have been a warthog that gave him that injury. Margaret, all the way from Kansas, you've actually just made an observation I was looking at as you spoke your question. You want to know if the tip of his tail is all there. It looks like he's missing it. Margaret, I just looked at it. Does look short from this particular angle, but I think he's got all his tail. How I'm knowing this is that the bottom of a leopard's tail is pure white, and I can't really see exactly under his tail, but it doesn't look like the spots extend all the way to the end of the tail. I also don't see any baldness at the tip of the tail, which would be as a result of some scar tissue if it had it bitten off by something. So it's a guess, but I'm guessing that he's got his whole tail. It just looks bizarre from this particular angle. It looks like he's got his tail chopped off and is a bit shorter than it should be. Also, if you bring down the line of the tail down towards his toes, you'll see that it almost fits. The geometry there looks like it will stretch past his toes almost. That's another sign that that leopard's tail is intact. But yeah, good observation there, Margaret. When I first saw Mvula with Scott Dyson more than a year ago now, we were on foot, and this particular leopard allowed us to follow him on foot for probably, I don't know, half a mile or so, just every now and again looking over his shoulder to make sure that we knew he was there and that he knew we were there, and that he wasn't quite snarling at us, and he carried on with his day. He allowed us to walk with him. It was just one of the most amazing experiences that I've experienced in recent times, was this tolerance that this animal has for humans, and just a really, really special experience. But while he sleeps peacefully here on the side of Buffelshoek Dam, Brent is scouring Cheetah Plains, and I'm sure he has an update or two for you. Says Brent, who's 1 year older than I am at the moment. Well, 1 year older than he was yesterday, basically. He hasn't done too much, I must be honest with you. He's just been lying here surveying his domain. Brian and I were busy chatting about where it would be better for him to actually find impala or not. I don't know, this particular pan, Brian was here 48 hours ago, and although it looks like it's dry, he said that there was this multitude of animals. There must have been a herd of elephant. What else was here, Brian? There was some nyala.
Yeah, some birds.
Some birds. So maybe Mvula knows something we don't, And then again, there's always just this likelihood that he's just come here for the view, that he's just enjoying watching the dam, same as we do from day to day, looking at some birds, watching the mist burn off and the clouds in the sky. leopard are not on timetables. They don't have an agenda to fulfill. They don't have a checklist of things to do in a day. They just be. They just are. And today he just is looking at this view. Sylvia in Oregon, you've just asked an interesting question in that it's nice to go over these things from time to time. It's a big stretch from this guy. You've asked who decides on individual leopard names, and it's a cause for great conversation, this in actual fact. So leopard are generally named when they turn 1 year old in the place where they are born by the ranger who found the cub in the first place, a year previously, obviously. The name is gifted to a leopard based on a couple of factors, based on their character or based on a significant event that happened in that leopard's life or a location that leopard likes to be in, a particular tree or a particular crossing or a particular rocky outcrop, etc., etc. If it's a female cub, that name sticks because female cubs do not leave their natal area. They'll set up territories adjacent to and usually within the same traverse area as their mothers and spend the rest of their lives in those areas. Male leopard disperse and they start leaving their natal areas or their natal ranges when they are around about 2 to 2.5 years old, sometimes stretching to about 3 years old. And they walk around then, dispersing from their natal range for about 2 to 3 years before they take over their own territory or squash open their own territory. At which point they are usually, not always, but usually far away from where they were born and therefore far away from the people that named them. So in other words, what will happen in this area is we all of a sudden will get a new male leopard, a new young male leopard in this area. And then based on a particular character trait or a particular location once again or a significant event, the rangers in that area will get together and name that leopard. It's not a name that is, the naming rights are not reserved and they're not necessarily carried over from his baby name, for lack of a better word, or his adolescent name, for lack of a better word. So Mvula was, let's just use him as an example, and once again, I'm just using him as an example. I don't know exactly where he was born or what his juvenile name was, but he would have been born somewhere else. He would have been named by those rangers, potentially, if he came from a commercially active place like the Sabi Sands. He then would have dispersed, and when he arrived here, he would have been named Mvula by the local rangers, by the local guys who were seeing him active at that particular point. And he would have been called Mvula, which means rain, for some event or some nature of his that I'm not too sure of exactly why he was named that. I'd have to ask Taxon and Aubrey for that. They probably were instrumental in giving him that name and were, they were present at that particular time. And that's basically how naming of leopards works, basically, in a nutshell. Have I forgotten anything? I don't think so, no. So I hope that answered your question. And like I said, it's a topic of much conversation, the naming of a leopard for a particular trait. Atypically, we've named Karula, which is a female leopard that is dominant in this area. We've named her cubs and Shadow's cub before they've reached a year old. And we've done that because they are such characters in our story. It took a little bit of negotiating with the local ranger teams around to actually settle on Karula's cub's name and Shadow's cub's names earlier than a year. We haven't named Shadow's cub. Excuse me, we haven't named Shadow's cub yet, but we have named Karula's cubs, Hosana and Shongile. And the local rangers have decided that those names will stick, and so everyone calls them Hosana and Shongile before they are a year old, which is quite nice of them. It was atypical, and it was a gift to us for that. Yeah, I think that's basically it. Have a look at that side profile there. For those of you who are interested in screen grabs, you're not going to get a much better screen grab of Mvula. And of course, there's always the chance that this is one of the last times that we see him in this particular state. So for those of you who keep records of these animals over the years and throughout the lives of these particular cats, it wouldn't be a bad idea to take a screenshot the next time you see him in profile, and also when he faces us again. And it'll be nice to add to your photo journal of him. I haven't seen him, how long now, Brian? I haven't personally seen Mvula for more than 6 or 7 months. Yeah, maybe even longer than that.
Quite a few months.
Yeah, many months. And it might be many months again before we see him, if we ever see him again. Excuse me for 1 second while I just do the administration that is necessary when you're the only vehicle in a sighting. So I'm quickly going to be speaking on the radio. The station's a single male leopard, still static at Buffelshoek Dam, 1 vehicle in this particular sighting and 1 on approach. Alright, and that was my administration, sort of done. Copy that. So Sean, all the way in Oregon, wants to know why he has much bigger front paws than back. And that's because he catches his food with those front paws, and they are slightly more developed. They are much bigger, probably 20% bigger than his back paws, and also more round. And that's because he can splay those toes open, or those fingers open. The back paws are used to launch himself off the ground in a charge at some prey, and then the front paws are used to catch and hold the prey down, and also to maneuver it, to manipulate it into a position where a killing bite can be delivered. Huge male leopard like this that have that very thick neck and very thickly muscled skull, or can deliver a bite force that can crush the skull of most animals, crush the next vertebra, and also bite into, in the case of warthog, bite through the chest cavity and into the heart with an ease that will astound you, to be honest with you. I don't even want to know what the bite force of these animals is, but it's incredible. And yeah, it's all that sort of make him this efficient killer that he is. And they are probably one of the best killers out here in terms of effort for reward. There are animals out here that have a higher success rate than leopard, and cheetah and wild dog have higher success rates than what leopard do. But for the conservation of energy, I do not think that there's an animal that has a large predator at least anyway, that has a higher conservation of energy. Yeah. If you just excuse me, this sighting is generating a lot of interest. I'm going to have to just go onto the radio one more time. Just bear with me, please. All right, and I think while I just manage the sighting, I think to send you over to Brent will be infinitely better than listening to me warble on the radio. See you in a bit.